Hi all. So diffuser mold, or the main part of the diffuser mold, come off the plug. Pretty simple. Pretty happy with that. It's now pretty much all one piece. So we have the majority of the bottom shape of the diffuser is one piece, and then there's just a secondary, just a sort of finishing piece for the top, which is really just the return surface that matches the rear clip. So happy with this. It come out better than I thought. Obviously next stage is sanding, because there's a few minor kind of holes in that which turn to be positives on the mold, but that's easy because we just sand it down, and there's no real kind of awkward places to sand here. It's pretty easy. You can see the lovely finish you get off of when you mold off of aluminium. It does tend to make a nice, smooth and simple finish. And then you can see the parcel tape. Where it molds off the parcel tape, it really loves to be shiny, which is why we love parcel tape, because it releases. So yeah, that's the newer design rear diffuser. So that molds it for sanding, but big push is now to get the rear clip started for the mold. And I did go through the mold, go through the plug and try to make sure that we are not going to get any lock with the mold sections. So one thing I did realize, unfortunately, was this area here. We have a return for obviously the wheel arch and return here. Now unfortunately this angle, it's exaggerated, is like that angle is like that. So if I did this as a complete one section, then that would lock, and you wouldn't get the mold off the plug, and you definitely wouldn't make a component out of it. So bit of a pain. I don't really want to make two extra sections here. So what I'm going to do, because I've got to spray this with gel coat anyway, I've got a few areas we've got to touch up and sand and buff and polish it before we take the mold. So what I'm going to do is basically just put a release angle on here, probably about 3 or 4 degrees, just to make sure. So we're going to have to add some filler basically on its back edge, and basically make sure that all of these angles have a nice sort of release, so they don't become a problem. Then this whole side section can be done in one. So need to put some filler in there, bit of a pain. Similar to this side, while I'm doing that, I can actually correct a minor, stuck to the, excellent. When we corrected the wheel arch, I noticed the fact that this here has come from quite thick to thin. It's lost about 8 to 10 millimeters in thickness. Now that's probably just because we reprofiled the arches. So at the same time, I'll basically build this back up so that at least that's a consistent width all the way down. So a little bit of filling to do there, bit of a pain, but effectively better to do it now while I have to spray it with gel anyway. The rear light pods and vents all have an angle that's about 2 degrees or more. So it's not exactly 100% symmetrical, but it's pretty close. But effectively it has a release angle, so I don't have to worry about that. Going through exactly how many sections or how many individual parts I've got to make for this mold, it looks like it's going to have to be 6. So the front clip mold we made in 5 sections. This one here I need an extra section because I've got a lot of returns that all sort of meet. You can imagine we have a return on the wheel arch here. We have a return at the bottom, albeit the component will probably be very small. But we have a return here and a return on this side there, and all the way along. So basically, to make sure we don't have lock, I can cut this. Or the side's going to have a parting line all the way along here. We'll have a parting line all the way down there. So this whole side section, and we'll just fill in this wheel arch. That will come off of the side. There's obviously the complete top. That will come off. There'll be one for all the returns on the front. That'll come off. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. The majority then, unfortunately, we're going to have one for the back, 5. Then we're going to have another one that's going to pick up this, this return, that return, and then the return all the way from around basically the exit return for the diffuser. So it'll have a section at the bottom there, those returns and that. So that will come down and off of the back. So we're gonna end up with a 6-part mold. But that's about the least amount, that's the least amount of parts I can make for this mold to make it so I can still make the component, but then completely don't get stuck with the lock, which basically makes it mechanically impossible to make the parts. So we did that. Unfortunately, with the side sill, it was only a tiny lock, so we had to make a modification to the side sill mold. We didn't save the buck on that one. We saved the buck on the front because it mold works well, because obviously that front buck is on the car at the moment. So either way around, it's time to make the mold for this clip. The front clip has a component in it now. It's just sitting there. It's probably good enough to pull out because it's been 4 or 5 days, but I've got to spray gel coat with this. That's kind of messy. So I've got to put my, reinstate my door here, which is just plastic, and paint this. So while I'm painting in here, well, it's not paint, I'm spraying gel coat. While I'm spraying gel coat in here, I'll leave that in the mold because it protects the mold and protects the component. I'll throw some plastic over it, but to be honest, it always gets a bit dusty in here. If you look at the distance to the floor, that looks nice and clean. This dusty, that not. It sprays everywhere. So yeah, spraying gel coat is spraying anything, to be honest, is not overly fun, but you just like the results. So yeah, the mold's happy with all the positioning now, all the gapping around the top and sides. I was happy with all that. Just a bit of modding on those wheel arch vents here. I probably explained before, I can't drop a return, I can't drop a recess in here for the wheel arch return. So for the turbo kind of heat exit, because I've put divisions in, unfortunately, under the mold, which make it impossible for me to cut that out and make the return. And so we'll just do a separate drop-in section to throw into the mold at a later date that will basically give us that lovely kind of step in there, so we can drop, when we drop a vent in there, basically it's flush with the body. That's something I can do after. So because this damn thing's so heavy, it's got so much filler and God knows whatever else, we need an ability to basically rock the mold to the left and rock the mold to the right, so that we don't disturb the mold, we don't disturb the parts we've put on the mold. Obviously the major top surface will probably be the first one, with a parting line all the way down here and along the back, along the other side. So that's all just one piece. Once we've made that part, then really to do the sides, I need to basically pivot this clip probably around about 60 degrees or so, then to allow me to laminate the side and laminate this return, because it's pretty hard to laminate upside down. It always has a tendency, the cloth when it gets wet just wants to peel away. Not good. So we have had to make another bar basically to pivot it on. We bolted that to the return flange at the bottom, and then obviously the convenient bolting point for this end is the actual mounting point there and there. Then the roof pivots, it's on the car itself. So yeah, we'll have to fill in these area here for the cage, but we don't need them. We don't need this in the mold, so I want the mold to be continuing across. So we'll fill in this hole here, fill that hole in, fill this area in, fill this area in, and fill this area in, and extend this edge a little bit just for the mold. I say the component will have to be cut back anyway, so but we've put all those extra wide flanges everywhere, so basically for the mold. The actual return on this will probably narrow down to about 1.5 inches all the way around. This section here will eventually be pretty much from there, mostly cut out and back down to here before it gets there again. So we will take out a lot of structure there, vertical surface, to allow it to sag a little bit. So what we're going to do is basically 2 pickup points for the hinges, which are there and there. We need to instate them in, obviously, to the component we make. But what we'll do is we'll make those two parts and basically an extra structure on the inside that goes all the way across here, all the way to the other side, picks up the two areas where the bolt flanges are and all the way down the other side. So basically like a secondary panel that we'll mold into it afterwards. That has the advantage then of basically adding some structure across there to make sure that when we bolt it on the car, it doesn't sort of wobble around a bit and makes it kind of stiffer, because we will have cut most of this area out because the roof scoop on the car basically will be forcing air into here, so we need to cut that out. And if I cut it out sort of hole big enough to get the scoop through, as the rear clip clips away, it's just a pain. So pretty much it's going to have to be just sort of cut down to probably less than, I don't know, probably about 10 mil return all the way along there. So yes, we still have another panel to make on the inside, but we'll do that in the first component when we lay it up in the mold. We will shape that with probably with foam, probably put some foam pieces in there, fill over the foam, and then we'll basically make the shape that we need. And then from that shape, we'll basically pull a little mold off of that part. So the first component on this car, we'll end up using that to make that part. And then from preceding parts after that, it'll be a separate mold and easy to bolt in afterwards. So the later ones might be, I don't know, a kilo lighter or so, whereas this one's going to be a little bit heavier because we're going to have to make that section on the car before we go any further. So yes, rear mold, the support's now welded, so basically just going to lift this up now and put it onto a sawhorse. Same with the other side, and then get it ready to start sanding and filling. So that's going to be this afternoon's work. So the front clip is in the mold, so it's all just waiting for my time basically to pull it out. But what's going to take the most time before May is to get this thing done. So I've only got 12, 13 weeks. So I really need to get this mold done. And then obviously after you've done the mold, you've still got to sand it, and you've still got to polish it, and you've still got to make the next component. So, you know, it's still, there's probably 2 weeks work. So really I got about 10 weeks to do this mold. Yeah, not under the gun at all. Anyway, if it was full time, that wouldn't be so much of a problem. But yeah, glad this came out okay. When I first put the first layer of tooling Gelco on the part, for some strange reason it wanted to fisheye like mad. I couldn't quite figure out why. I think it may have been something because this part here was hanging around for quite a long. It must have got some silicone or something on it that it didn't like, and it took a little while for it to paint the fish. Normally you brush the Gelco out or spray the Gelco out, and it covers really evenly, really quickly. But it was just fish eyeing. It would just pull away. So I was concerned that it would affect the mold, but eventually it just took a bit of head banging persistence on the gel coat. And also we put 2 layers of gel. But it came out well, so I'm super happy that hasn't screwed it up, because that was a possibility. We've got some areas that we need to sand and polish. There's some of the white gel coat that's come off of the buck, so we're gonna have to sand that out. But yeah, 1 or 2 more steps down the line. Obviously we started in between fiberglassing jobs, looking at the headlamp design. So this is obviously the buck, so it's all sacrificial anyway. So I've cut that out, and we're looking at the headlamp design and how I can get it in now. Hopefully I can get a high-low beam LED unit in the top with a secondary low beam, secondary high beam stroke fog lamp. So secondary driving light, but that I can also has a fog light, so it has a dual beam in the same unit. Low is obviously a fog. You can actually get a yellow fog and then a white high beam, which is kind of odd, but yeah, whatever. I chose the white and white. I'm not a big fan of yellow, so So hopefully we'll have the 2 units in there, but all LED driven, and supposedly quite bright. So yes, anyway, that's about it for the moment. I'll speak to you all soon.